Sponsored by Experience Imagination. If you want to ignite the anger of an artist or a musician while at the same time making every corporate executive and president salivate with greed, there's only two words you have to say: AI. Now, I've been thinking a lot about this subject ever since the proverbial genie has been let out of the bottle. And well, I have an idea, and I hope you find it positive even if you think it might be impossible to actually execute, but we have to start somewhere. And since this is slightly out of my normal zone of comfort, I brought in a legal expert.
Hi.
Hey there, welcome back to Surviving Animation, your guide to making it in the business of cartoons. My name's Eric Calderon, and first of all, I'd like to thank my sponsor once again, Falcons Creative Group, and their podcast, Experience Imagination. Actually, this episode is about themed dining, which should be really fun, and I just really owe it to them for letting me use their space, letting me work with their fantastic sound designer, Rick, and also just giving me the ability to get content more frequently out to you. With that being said, let's get right into the topic, which is AI. It might be strange to you that I'm talking about AI, and I know it's a very difficult subject to bring up. In many ways, as soon as you say it, a lot of people just get really pissed off, and a lot of other people just go, it's the future of everything. I think probably the answer is somewhere in the middle, but if we don't talk about it, if we don't keep bringing it up, I fear that we won't ever have a way to properly work with this software, work with this new state of affairs. And my idea is a little bit crazy, but I think it's a start, and let's just get into it. Okay, my idea for artists and individuals working with AI is a proposal I like to call bots with benefits. Now, this is basically a coordinated dance between corporate, government, industry union, and individuals. Let me define what each of those just generally mean so that way I can use that shorthand in my theory of bots with benefits. So corporate in general is going to refer to any company that is creating any kind of software that is AI-based that uses as part of its programming the sourcing of original artist work that was done originally by an actual human being. So that's kind of a general lump term. I know there's a lot of other AIs out there that don't use that, but for the purpose of this conversation, I refer to that as corporate. Government is going to be a general term I use for basically any regulatory body that actually comes in and makes some kind of demands or some kind of structure by which corporate and individual and industry union must adhere to. So I'm not sure if that's going to be local or federal or somewhere in between, but for the purposes of this discussion, that is what I mean by government. Industry union is actually going to refer to the bodies that are already in place, like a CIFA, like the Animation Guild, that work with corporate and individuals to create kind of a structured union process to make sure that there's a general set of rules that everyone must adhere to so that every negotiation is not piecemeal and unstructured and unregulated. Finally, individual, for the purposes of this discussion, is going to refer to anyone who's making actual art on their own, actual human beings, people I hope who are watching this channel right now. Now, this idea doesn't necessarily apply to maybe directors or storyboard artists or animators or producers, but this is really focused on the people who are making original character designs, original art. Again, this is not like a full comprehensive how are we going to work with all of AI in all instances. This is just one slice and a conversation I want to keep going forward with. But again, individual refers to those actual artists. Okay, so why am I doing this crazy bots with benefits idea? My main motivation is that I feel that right now there's corporate making software that costs hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars in order to create this idea of some more efficient or some more advanced thinking to make, in this case, art creation democratized and possibly in the hands of different people who don't know how to draw. Now, they're spending this hundreds of millions of dollars with the hopes of generating billions in profits. So my idea and my motivation to do this kind of bots with benefits is if corporates are spending hundreds of millions with the hopes of earning billions, I feel like there should be an additional upfront cost for corporate to basically allow and and permit individuals to gain revenue, gain benefits right up front, later possibly behind, but most importantly upfront as part of their responsibility to the original people making that art. So how does bots with benefits work? Let's start with this. Let's say you're an individual and you're creating some kind of art, some kind of independent drawing that's on your own, that's in your own style. Bots with benefits would then require that corporate create a verification process. Now, that verification process would mean that they would almost create kind of like a side software, and that software would then look through all the sources of the original art and kind of make a heat map of where things are being made. Now, it doesn't have to be that precise to work for this model. It just has to kind of give a verification check on either a person's IP address or their individual. Once that verification check has been made, then government comes in and basically creates a structure that regulates that corporate shave a part of that production cost of making that software into a fund. And that fund and that percentage, let's call it 1.5% right now, is managed by industry union. Now, once that fund has been created as a slice of the software production cost by corporate, now individuals can go ahead and make an application to that fund. If they qualify, because of verification, they receive an industry union managed health and medical benefits. So that is essentially bots with benefits. Now, in some cases, if an individual is a pro or is part of a structured TV show that's part of the union, they may receive some kind of pro status, something that kind of says, in theory, that person is part of a mass-produced, mass-distributed piece of entertainment or artwork. Therefore, in theory, or proven through software model, more of the sourcing of the AI-generated imagery is from that show or from that individual, then I think they should actually get kind of a pro status. And if they get that pro status, now we're talking about living wage approval. So then that fund that has been verified and you're at a pro status should fund something like, let's call it $1,000 a week, because that software is in a disproportionate order of magnitude using that art and that original source material to create new art that other people are using under that said software. So that pro status in the bots with benefits plan should trigger a living wage funded by corporate and managed by industry union. Okay, that's it. I know that was a lot to take in. That's why I brought in my friend Aaron here. Aaron is actually a legal expert. His main focus is entertainment law. And with the bots with benefits plan all out there, Aaron, what do you think?
So I think it's a great plan. I struggle a little bit with just AI law in general right now. I feel like it's the wild, wild west when it comes to new legislation and bills. I think, less than half of the states in the U.S., right, have enacted legislation. And in Florida, for instance, the only thing we have about AI is concerning, I believe, politics using AI, right? So given such an expansive industry, there isn't much legal or legislative thought given to it. Which makes it hard to regulate, right? Which is what you're proposing is a sort of regulation. And so that's my initial reaction. And I think with some unpacking, maybe there are ways to get this thing done. It might be a bill or a law. It might be something, that a union supports or a performance rights organization does. But what do you think about that?
I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I think we've talked offline about the problem with AI in general when it comes to a legal perspective is the lack of precedent. So that kind of creates this Wild West atmosphere. But do you think that something like this, even a proposal, is there anything that's similar to it out there? Am I kind of out there on my own with something so new and crazy that it's not possible? Is that good or is bad? What is your feeling on, has there been any other things similar to this that has been proposed?
Yeah, so I think this would be similar to the American Society of Composers, Authors, and Publishers, ASCAP, right? They're a performance rights organization that basically collects license from their members and license that to the venues, broadcasters, digital streaming services, etc. And they pay ASCAP, and it goes back to the members. So it's kind of a triangle, similar to what you're suggesting. But I know you're not saying royalties, but it's in that kind of realm there.
No, I'm glad you said that. No, and specifically, I don't say royalties for this program. I think I might be a little bit shy on the idea of it because of the nervousness of how big the entire legislative machine is. So the reason I keep calling it bots with benefits, it's really a benefits plan. It's really a way to kind of give people the minimum to help them survive. Surviving animation in the industry by, kind of scraping from these software companies a way to just pay for basic healthcare, basic medical, which is already in place with the unions. But I think, it needs a new funding source and a new structure by which, we're kind of benefiting. That's why I kind of don't use royalties in that specific situation. I think you and I also talked, this is kind of similar to what happens in SAG too, right?
Yeah, definitely. When you bring up unions, that's the first thing I think of is SAG-AFTRA's deal with Narrative, the artificial intelligence company that does digital voice replicas for ads, right? So they're allowing, they struck a deal where the members of SAG can now license their voice to Narrative for they do a marketplace for brands and AI audio. So there is a deal in place, right, where we have a union that goes to a business or an organization to promise to pay members, right? So again, there's that triangle that you've been talking about existing in multiple ways here, just not specifically in the way you're proposing.
Okay, got it. Okay, so let's talk crazy for a bit. Let's say that this idea is a little bit of a good idea, and Pete will get interested in it. Whether it's people in animation, people in legislation, even people in corporate, kind of say, this bots with benefits. It's crazy, but maybe it's okay. Maybe let's go for it. Like, how does it actually happen? How do we, wrangle individuals, corporate, government, and industry union to actually make something like this happen?
Yeah, so I mean, from one side, right, with it being a bill or legislation, I'm not an animator, so I can't bring up the "I'm just a bill" song. But what I can do is kind of briefly explain the process, right? So what we start with an idea, which is what we have here, right? We have a citizen, a group, or legislator. They basically suggest legislation based on concerns or issues or ideas. And then they introduce that to a representative who then introduces that to a drafting committee, right, in the House. And that bill is then studied by the committee, which they decide to amend, pass, or fail in. If it passes, then it will be moved to another committee or to the House, right? And then it's debated and amended and voted on by the entire chamber, which needs a majority of votes. Once it passes from the House, it then goes to the governor's desk to then sign, right? And so that's kind of the overall process, which is a very hard process to get through because there's just so many people that can vote no, right? And there can be many reasons why they vote no. I think the strongest case right now is in California, where they actually have an AI bill similar to the EU's bill that's just trying to regulate the industry, focusing on the high risk AI companies. And a lot of their language is about this reasonable restriction. And we see a lot of pushback from people in the industry, folks on either side of the aisle, because they don't understand it. And so that's kind of the issue with passing these kind of bills, is that if people don't understand it, they won't vote for it. So it's so new that it's hard to kind of get past. And then you do have lobbyists that exist in our political system, right? And we have AI companies that have a ton of money and make it just harder to pass things, given their feedback to representatives when these things start to move along.
That's great. I mean, all of that is kind of what I expected. Not too far off from the "I'm Just a Bill" song. I will say,
Okay.
just filled in with a lot more important detail and a lot more specifics. And I think that your structure and also your skepticism is shared by me. And I think, I'm just surviving animation. I'm just Eric Calderon. I'm just here with a crazy idea. But to kind of have you here on the channel to kind of explain what it would take for actually happen, that's great for me. That's great for my viewers. And rah rah rah. Let's see what we can do. So. All right, so this is a crazy long idea. It might never happen. It might take years. It might take a decade. But I kind of see in the future that a program like Bots with Benefits or any kind of benefits-based program that is a marriage of individual and corporate and industry union and government, will eventually, let's hope, settle into a structure that is going to be as familiar as ASCAP, as a SAG agreement, as a union job or a DGA agreement, so that we can all benefit from these new technologies and share with each other so that humans and corporate can continue to create with enthusiasm art and animation and entertainment that is enhanced by whatever software they want to make up for the moment. So, okay, since that's going to take a long time, Aaron, what can people do today? I mean, a lot of people worry right now about creating AI art. There's software platforms out there right now that kind of promise to never be scraped. There's software out there that can kind of basically corrupt your image so that it actually anti-feeds or damages the source creation machine, etc. But just on a personal level, what can an individual artist do to protect themselves?
Yeah, so I think as an individual artist, right, it depends on what your goal with that art is, right? If it's for a non-commercial use, I would suggest probably putting it in a place that's not easily accessible on the internet, maybe behind a paywall or on a website that has one of those CAPTCHA, are you a robot, stop checks, right? That kind of make it harder for that to be scraped. And if it is commercial use, you might want to consider copywriting, which is, you just kind of registered on, I think it's copyright.gov is the website, right? And so that way, if there is any, if it's used, you can actually bring it in a lawsuit. I think there's a few lawsuits right now, like we kind of talked about earlier, with there not being much legislative legal precedents. We are starting to see some judicial legal precedents, which is another way that kind of laws are de facto made. And so you have Anderson versus Stability AI, as well as Getty Images versus Stability MI. And what we're seeing there, I mean, we're just in discovery, but what we're seeing is that the court is only going to consider art that has been copywritten. Because if it's not copywritten or copyrighted after the fact, you can only sue for actual damages and not sue for injunctions or for them to stop.
Okay, let me just make one
so-
clarification to the audience,
Sorry.
and I know you and I have talked about this. So, copyright is my understanding is triggered at the moment of creation of anything into a fixed medium. So, if I have an idea in my head, it's not copyright. As soon as I write it down or draw it or create it, then copyright is actually commences at that point. But copyright protection requires that you get a registration of that copyright, which means submitting it to the copyright regulation location or something like that. Is that correct, Aaron?
Exactly. So again, copyright protection and these lawsuits we're seeing are what they're able to kind of use as standing. But then in Stability versus Anderson, what we're seeing is they're using a website called haveibeentrained.com, which actually illuminates what art specifically has been trained or used by these AI companies. So that's something that you as an artist can check now to see, like, has my art been used previously, and that's a good way of kind of knowing, where you are with that and whether your protections in place now are working. I will give a caveat with Have I Been Trained that this also is an AI system, and so by submitting your art there, you are opening yourself up to whatever their data collection system is that, I don't know enough about. I just kind of read about this website in the case notes for Anderson versus Stability.
Oh, well, worth considering, and thank you so much. So, okay, that's it for today's episode. Again, I'd like to thank my sponsor, Falcons Creative Group, and their podcast, Experience Imagination. This week's episode coming up is about theme dining. Also, I've got 4 mugs left. I've sold 21 of them out of the initial batch of 25. So please hit me up directly with a message if you'd like to buy a surviving animation bug. I'd like to thank Aaron Cahill for coming on today as a legal expert. He's also a good friend, so I'm just really happy to have his professional advice on this matter. Thank you again, Aaron. And that's it. I hope to see your comments. I'm a little nervous about what everyone's going to say. Bots with benefits, that's my idea. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye.